Going into topic 8 now of chapter 7, we're continuing to factor trinomials. But now our a term of standard form of the quadratic expression is not going to be a 1. So they're a little more challenging as we do this. And throughout, even in the previous part, we mentioned that a little bit of art, judgment, and brainstorming was important. We call that trial and error, or trial and check. You use pencil to do these. You want to undo the foil. And then we're going to show you this AC method that ties in with the factoring by grouping method we had in an earlier lesson. Okay. So, for something like this one was pretty straightforward. An a term here is, of course, a 1. So this is going to be a little bit easy. So it's in standard form. There's no factor to take out. 2 sets of parentheses. Our first term can only be an x and an x. 5 is prime, so 5 and 1. They're all positive. So we end up with this. We FOIL it, and it checks. Okay, now we have something like this. So there are no common factors. We have a 4, yep. All right, so again, we're going to put 2 sets of parentheses. Now, here's the case where our a term, and again, this is ax squared plus bx plus c. This is our standard form. Now, when I refer to the a term, I'm talking about that 4. Now, what could it be, this 4? Well, remember, it could be a 4 and a 1, or a 2 and a 2. Okay. Now, as we look at this middle term is a 4. Now, I could try a 4 and a 1, but more often it's a 2 and a 2. So let's try that, a 2x and a 2x. And remember, we're going to use a pencil here, and I can erase this as well. Now, for a 15, we're going to have a 1 and a 15, and it doesn't look like it's going to be a 1 and a 15. So we're going to have a 3 and a 5. And I see it, a 3 and a 5. I'm looking ahead here a little bit of experience. So my outers will be a 10. My inners is a 6. So 10 minus 6 is 4. And if this is a negative, and if this is a positive, notice 2x, 5x is a negative 10x, negative 10x. And my inners, a positive 6x, it ends up being a negative 4x. And then 3 times a negative 5 is a negative 15, and our first term is this, so this one checks out. So again, did a little bit of trial and error, but not too much. I didn't have to erase anything. And they go through the whole scenario of trying things out here. Okay. Now, for this one, again, as we look at it, there's nothing we can take out, so 2 sets of parentheses. Now here for my a term here, it's going to be a 6 and a 1, or a 3 and a 2, and this is a 5. Well, because my middle term, my b term, that's what this is called, is so large, I'm going to use the 6a and the a. And I can see it now. And this is going to be a 5 and a 1. So when I do my outers, I get a 30. When I do my inners, I get a 1. And if they're both negative, I get my negative 31a. And negative 1 times negative 5 is a positive 5. Okay, now again, part of this is I have a little experience. You may take longer in figuring these out, but this is the strategy we use. Now, when we look at this is kind of a good note. We factored this, but notice we could still take a 2 out of this. So what you missed here is initially taking the 2 out of each term. So be careful about that. And your parentheses shouldn't have any more common factors in there. Okay, so that's a little better. All right, let's check this one out here. Hopefully you're pausing it to get time to write it down. And we have a 6, an 8, and a 2, so I know I can take a 2 out, and I can take an x out of every term, so 2x. And then this is 3x squared minus 4x plus 1. So 2x, and now 2 sets of parentheses. Now, that you have a 3 as our a term, that's a little comforting because 3 is prime. So this has to be 3x and an x. And 1 is prime. So a 1 and a 1. So when I do my outers, I get a 3. My inners, I get a 1. And I need a negative 4, and this is a positive 1, so both of these are going to be negative. And when I FOIL it, it checks. So again, you need a strategy, and use pencil for these, because they take a little time to think about. And once you get your answer, you FOIL it. If it doesn't work with those signs, maybe switching the signs around or trying some other factors here. Okay. We took out the 2x, and then there's our factorization, and we FOIL it, and it checks. And there's our original. Okay, now when we see our initial term is a negative here, what we could do, and what will probably be suggested, is we factor out a negative 1 here. So this becomes 2x squared plus x minus 6. So we reverse the signs. Now our lead coefficient is positive, which I said we like to do. So we keep our negative 1 out there, 2 sets of parentheses, and this has to be a 2x and an x. Now it's probably not going to be a 6 and a 1, but combinations of a 2 times 3 or a 3 times 2. So if this is a 3 here, and this is a 2 here, I'm using this one, Notice my outers now are a 4, my inners are a 3, and the difference is 1. So if this is a plus, that gives you a positive 4x. The inners are a negative 3x. It gives you this, so it checks out. All right. Now, I haven't looked at the answers purposefully so that I have a little sense of challenge as we go through here and a little bit of the unknown, so to speak. But I figured that's what they were going to do. And there's what we got. Okay, let's take a look at this one now. It's in standard form, but I can see we can take a 5x out of each term. So we get now 2x squared plus x plus 1. So 5x, two sets of parentheses, 2x, x. Now the only possibilities are this. So let's see here. Yeah. So once you get beyond this point here, you've factored out a common 5. This is no longer factorable, I don't believe. Let's check it out. So, we've gone as far as it could go. This is not factorable. Okay. And you've factored it as far as you can go. Now, another method that we use sometimes in these trinomials when our a term is not a 1 is a method that's called the AC method. Now, I like the way they've laid this out. They're describing it to you. The a from our trinomial times c gives us a product. We then want to find two integers whose product is AC, but whose sum is b, our term, middle term, the b part. And then we're going to go through a protocol that I will show you. So let's do one here for you. Okay. Now, take some good notes on this. This will be the protocol we're going to find. So, again, this is ax squared plus bx plus c. And in the AC method, we are to multiply our a term by our c term. So a times c, 4 times 35 is 140. Now, with that 140, we want to find what factors are in the 140. So we're going to get the prime factorization of it. We know we can take a 2 out of there, and that's going to be 70. We can take a 2 out of there, and that's 35. And we can take a 5 times 7. And these are the prime factorizations of 140. Now we're looking to get a combination of these factors so that it adds up to our b term, which is 33. So what combination of these will give us a 33? Well, if we go 2 times 2 is 4, times 5 is 20. 20 and a 7, no, that's only 27. Now how about if we go 2 times 2 is 4 times 7, that's a 28, and then a 5, that adds up to 33. So these are going to be our factors here. Now what we do is we rewrite this trinomial into a 4-term polynomial. We keep our first term. That's going to be 4x squared. And then we're going to say this is a plus 28x. And then this is going to be plus 5x. Just using our factors here. And this is going to be plus 35. Now remember, this adds up to our b term, which is 33x. But now we have a 4-term polynomial that we could factor using that grouping method. So let's get rid of this, and we're going to factor this now by grouping. So what can I take out of my first 2 terms? Well, I can take out a 4x. And then I'm left with x plus 7. Now, what can I take out of these 2 terms? I can take out a plus 5, and I get an x plus 7. 2 lessons ago, this is what we did, factoring by grouping. So, we can do it their way, x plus 7, 4x plus 5. Yet I would have written the 4x plus 5 first and then this, but either way should work. And if we FOIL this now, we get our trinomial. Okay, this is the AC method. And let's see what they're showing us. So our A term is 4, our B term is 33, and our C term is 35. We're going to multiply A times C, get 140. And we want to find out what factors of 140 give us a 33. And we figured out it was a 5 and a 28. So now what you do, and they're showing you a little more brainstorming here, you rewrite the 33x as a 5x and a 28x. Notice we set it up a little differently than they did, but that's okay. We factored by grouping, and we get our answers the same. Okay, we're going to pause and do this one here. Now, notice there's a 12, a 26, and a 12. So I think the first thing we should do is take out the greatest common factor. That helps us, our work be a little more easy. So we're going to take out a 2y from each term. So that gives us 6y squared minus 13y plus 6. And again, our A term is 6, and our C term is 6. So A, let's see, A times C equals 36. And we want to factor now the 36 into its prime factorizations. We take a 2 out of there, and this will be 18. A 2 out of there, and that's going to be a 9. And then we can do a 3 and a 3. Now, we want to end up with a 13 as our middle term. So this one's sort of easy. It's 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. So our b term here, we're going to use a 4 and a 9, and they're both going to be negative. So now we have to rewrite this equation as a 4-term polynomial. So this part stays the same. 6y squared minus 4y minus 9y plus 6. All right, that'll work. Okay, now we have 4 terms, and remember this adds up to a negative 13. So we're going to factor something out of these 2 terms, and it looks like a 3y. No, we can't factor out a 3. It has to be a 2. 2y is better, because it doesn't go into the 4. So 2y. So this gives us then a 3y minus 2. Okay, that's going to work. And then here, to get the correct signs, I have to factor out a negative 3, and I get 3y minus 2. Okay, perfect now. Again, you're using that technique we had a little earlier, factoring by grouping. So now we can get 2y minus 3. I'm doing it my way, and then this, 3y minus 2. Now if you FOIL this, this all checks out. And let's see what they got. Okay, they took out the 2y. They've identified our a, b, and c term. And they factored by grouping. Rewritten it, of course, and then they get this, and that's what we had. Okay. Now don't forget to include the 2y, yes. So there's your final answer. Okay, we have another one. This doesn't look too difficult. Let's do it from scratch here. Now I haven't done these before. So our a term is 4, our c term is this. So this is going to be a negative 24. And we're going to factor that. We're going to take a 2 out, get a negative 12. Take a 2 out and get a negative 6. Take a 2 out, get a negative 3. And I don't need this here. So we have 8 times 3 is 24. Good. Now we have to figure out what will our b term become now. B term is 5. So here I have 2 times 2 times 2. I have a negative 8. So these are going to be the negative here, and this will be a positive 3. So if I add these factors together, I get my b term. So now I have to rewrite it. 4x squared minus 8x plus 3x. I'm using these factors to redefine my b term, minus 6. So I'm going to factor out here a 4x, and I get an x minus 2. I'm going to factor out a plus 3, and I get an x minus 2. And then this will be in one term, 4x plus 3. and an x minus 2. And if I FOIL this, I get my original trinomial. But I'm using that AC method. Now, in order to really master this, you need to practice it. And, you can play this again. You want to get used to the technique of doing it. This could really help you out in some difficult trinomials that you're trying to factor here. All right, they're defining the terms, and there we go. So we've rewritten our B term using these factors, and there we go. And there's our answer. Now, chances are something like this you might be able to do by using that guess and check method that we spoke about. And some tips: always look for the greatest common factor first, and then factor completely so that what is left inside the parentheses, there's no more common factors. Okay. Now, this is running 26, so we went a little long on this, so we'll not do these, but that's the practice, and then these are the answers.